I'm Ashley Witt. I did the programming on the Modern Symphonic Orchestra. It was only named recently, okay. And did it actually specifically, even though it was done for other libraries before it was done, other samplers before it was done specifically for the Emulator X, because of my experience with the emulators before Emulator X. And then we worked closely together actually with EMU to make it so that Emulator could also change what it did so that it would take advantage of the library as I was taking advantage of the emulator. It was kind of a real good mutual working atmosphere, and that's why all of the non-tool programming came about, is because we were able to work so closely on that. For the Modern Symphony Orchestra, which is what I had got going here, I programmed it, and one of the main issues that I wanted to make sure that EMU understood when I started working on this was that everybody's got these tools going, and a lot of people are getting a little frustrated and taking too much time using tools. So what I wanted to do right away was make it so that they didn't have to use tools for most importantly was for the machine gun effect, which is hitting a chord or a note over and over again, and you hear that same sample, and it's what I call showing your hand that it samples right away. So you can hear it with this. So it's changing, it's choosing different samples and rotating, so you don't have that machine gun effect anymore. That is the main patch that will come up when you open up one of our what we call flex patches. If you want, from there you are able to use a key switch and do with pizzicato. In this case, we'll call it first and second finger. So it's going back and forth, first and second finger. You hit the next key switch, it'll just reverse that to second and first finger. Create your own pattern with that, but it would be difficult with that creating pattern thing to do triplets. So there's a key switch for triplets, and you can reverse the triplets too. And then what I call quadruplets, so it's 2 up and 2 down. A lot more effective with brass and such and woodwinds. So that goes through the entire orchestra. That type of key switching, the very first one is what I would call kind of a random that avoids the machine gun effect, and then the others, all the other instruments follow what you would call double tonguing for the brass or the woodwinds, and the strings would be up down bow, and then the triplets also are with the trombones and the French horns, everybody. So if you created a part on the trombone that say went da 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 with the pattern, you could actually copy that part down to the other instruments, and then end up with the whole orchestra following that same pattern, since they all follow the same key switch structure. So here, one of the things that we all do when we get a new library, which is what somebody would do when they pick this up, is they take one of their old sequences and they drop in their new sounds. Most of the time, no matter how good the library is, no matter how good the samples, the programming, when you do this drop-in, it usually sounds really bad and you have to start tweaking right away. The reason that this sounds as good as it does on just a MIDI file, which this was a scan from the original score and dropped in, and the only change made was on the volume on the lead part, which comes in. Both of them came out just a little quiet, so I brought them up so that you could actually hear them. Other than that, this is a general MIDI file. Let me make sure the volume is on here. lot of these, at demos, people like to make everything perfect and be a great sounding demo, but I think this in itself, just as a general MIDI file, playing back just dropped in sounds, it sounds pretty good, and you wouldn't have to do much tweaking. In fact, when I did the job for this originally, it took me almost 9 hours to make it so that it was mocked up well enough for the score that it was being used for, so that it could actually be used. This, just like this, it could have been used, because it wasn't used for the film, it was just used for the mock-up so it could be seen on film. I wish I would have had this back then. So this is just showing off basically the strings here. And this would be more like showing off more of the whole orchestra and being played back on a laptop. 2 instances of the Emulator 4, about 30 MIDI channels, somewhere around 200 voices. It really does show, though, that the Emulator X isn't all that processor hungry, since it can run all of this as 2 VSTIs on a laptop, playing around 200 voices on 30 channels. So, and the orchestra obviously is not too huge, so that it can't play back. Every one of the patches that were being used in that song was all the flex patches, without any extra. I didn't change articulations, I just left it on the non-machine gun effect patches and just let the thing play it. What it did was just allow me not to have to think about, whenever it hit 2 notes, I didn't have to think about having to change velocities a little so the 2 notes next to each other didn't sound the same, Yeah, that's about it on the orchestra part of it.